My name is Valerie. At dinner that night, 20 years after Grandma left for her round-the-world trip, she put her fork down, looked straight at me, and asked, "Sweetheart, why are you still renting that tiny place in Brooklyn? Whatever happened to the Manhattan studio we gave you for your 18th birthday, the one with the little balcony facing the park?" Before I could open my mouth, Mom smiled like it was the funniest thing and said, "Oh, that apartment belongs to Mason now." Dad just stared at his plate. Mason kept scrolling on his phone. The room went dead quiet. Grandma didn't blink. She dabbed the corner of her mouth with her napkin, then gave the smallest, calmest smile I've ever seen. "Finish your plates," she said softly. "Then grab your coats. We're going for a drive. Open that door tonight, and you'll finally understand everything." My heart slammed against my ribs. For months, Mom had been texting me almost weekly. "Just one more transfer, Valerie Mason's in a tight spot." I always sent the money. I thought I was still the owner. I had no idea the real shock was waiting 45 minutes away, right on the 20th floor of the building I used to call mine. If you've ever had family take something that was supposed to be yours forever, drop your story in the comments. Where are you watching from? Like and subscribe so you don't miss what happened when we walked through that door. You're not ready for this one. The apartment had always been mine long before I turned 18. Grandma Evelyn bought the studio on the 20th floor when I was 16. She walked into the closing with her lawyer paid cash from the sale of Grandpa's old warehouse in Queens and put the deed straight in my name. She told me later it was the smartest way to skip estate taxes when the time came. All I knew back then was that I suddenly owned a 520-square-foot piece of Manhattan with a balcony big enough for 2 chairs and a perfect slice of Central Park view. My 18th birthday wasn't the day I got the place. It was the day I finally got the keys. Grandma threw a small party in the empty living room. White balloons, grocery store cake, and a brand new set of brass keys on a red ribbon. She pressed them into my hand and said, "This is your anchor, Valerie. No matter where life drags you, you'll always have a corner of this city that belongs only to you." Then she hugged me so hard my ribs creaked. 2 weeks later, she left. She had a battered suitcase, a brand new passport full of blank pages, and a grin I can still see when I close my eyes. She kissed my forehead on the front steps of my parents' house in New Jersey and promised postcards from every continent. The first one arrived from Reykjavik 3 weeks after that, a picture of the northern lights with her handwriting on the back. "Having the time of my life. Hold down the fort, kiddo." I moved into the studio the same month I started freelancing as a graphic designer. The commute to client meetings was a joke. 10 minutes on the subway. Sometimes I just walked across the park with my laptop in a backpack. I bought a secondhand desk that fit perfectly under the window, hung string lights along the brick wall, and filled the shelves with every design book I could afford. Friends crashed on the pull-out sofa when they needed a night away from dorms or bad roommates. I felt like the luckiest 18-year-old on the planet. The place was tiny, sure. The kitchen barely held a fridge and a 2-burner stove. The bathroom door hit the bed if you opened it too fast, but it was mine. Paid for. No mortgage. No landlord. I kept the deed in a fireproof box under the bed like it was made of gold. Grandma's postcards kept coming. One from Machu Picchu showed her in a ridiculous alpaca hat. Another from a night market in Bangkok had a smear of chili sauce in the corner. She never asked about rent or bills. She knew the co-op fees were low and I could cover them with 2 logo jobs a month. Every card ended the same way: "Love you bigger than the sky. Keep the balcony light on for me." I did. I left the little string lights plugged in 24/7 even when I was away for weekends. From the park they looked like one warm star on the 20th floor. I had no idea that light would stay on for someone else far longer than it ever stayed on for me. Mason arrived in the city the same year my freelance invoices finally covered Brooklyn rent without panic. He called me from Penn Station with 1 duffel bag and a community college acceptance letter he never intended to use. Sis dorms are insane money, he said, voice full of that little brother charm he'd perfected since we were kids, sharing the backyard swing set. Just let me crash at the studio for the first semester. I'll be out before you notice. I still remembered him at 6 years old following me everywhere, like a shadow begging me to teach him how to draw superheroes on the driveway with sidewalk chalk. I'd promised Mom the day he was born that I'd always watch out for him. Saying yes felt like keeping that promise. 3 months, I told him. Then you figure out campus housing. He moved in that weekend. Air mattress on the floor, Xbox hooked to my TV, protein shake mixes taking over the tiny fridge. I gave him a spare key and showed him how to work the finicky building laundry in the basement. He hugged me so hard my feet left the ground and swore he'd keep the place spotless. The first few weekends, everything looked normal. I'd subway over from Brooklyn on Saturdays, strip the sheets for Airbnb guests, restock the mini soaps, and find his stuff neatly stacked in one corner. He even left 20s on the counter sometimes with a sticky note. Gas money, thanks Val. Then the note stopped. Classes turned into online, only then into nothing at all. The air mattress became a real bed delivered one afternoon while I was at a client pitch in Soho. His gaming setup grew 3 monitors and a glowing keyboard that lit up the brick wall like a nightclub. Friends I'd never met started sleeping on the pull-out sofa on weeknights. I still came by most Sundays to flip the apartment for the next booking. The doorman waved like always, the elevator still smelled like lemon polish, and the balcony light stayed on. Mason would be sprawled on the couch in sweatpants shouting at football games on the TV, waving when I walked in. "Hey, you're the best sister ever," he'd say, barely looking up. I believed him. My own work exploded that year. Branding gigs, late nights in Brooklyn coffee shops, invoices finally hitting 4 figures. Driving into the city every weekend to clean started feeling like a chore, but the extra $300 a booking helped pay for better software and a new drawing tablet. I told myself it was temporary. Mason's friends multiplied. Empty beer cans appeared in the recycling. The fridge filled with takeout boxes instead of the groceries I used to leave. Once I found a girl's glittery heel under the bed while vacuuming and just laughed it off. College phase, right? Mom called every couple of weeks asking how her baby boy was settling in. I'd say fine, he's keeping the place tidy enough. She'd laugh and tell me I was such a good big sister. Dad never asked questions. He just sent random Venmos labeled pizza money for the kids. I kept the Airbnb listings active because the cash flow smoothed out slow months. Guests left 5-star reviews about the view and the cozy vibe. They never mentioned the Xbox controllers or the faint smell of weed that started lingering no matter how many candles I burned. Mason changed the Wi-Fi password once and forgot to tell me until a guest complained. Another time, the super texted about noise complaints at 2 in the morning. I handled it all from Brooklyn, wired him extra for utilities, and reminded myself only a few more months. He never left. By the time I realized the 3-month deal had quietly turned into 3 years, the apartment didn't feel like mine on the weekends anymore. It felt like I was the one visiting. One Saturday night, I drove over the bridge into Manhattan to get the studio ready for a week-long corporate booking. I let myself in with the spare key the doorman keeps for me and stopped dead in the doorway. My winter coats were gone from the hall closet. The built-in shelves that used to hold my old portfolios and design awards now displayed Mason's sneaker collection in neat rows. The drawer where I kept spare linens was stuffed with his hoodies instead. He shuffled out of the bathroom in boxers, rubbing his eyes. "Oh hey, Mom said it was cool to use the extra space." I opened the bedroom closet. Empty. Not one hanger with my clothes. Just his jeans and jerseys taking up every inch. "Where's my stuff? Mom came by last month and boxed it up," he mumbled. "Said you never wear any of it anymore and I needed room for my gear." I stood there staring at the bare rod where my dresses used to hang. Something cold settled in my stomach, but I swallowed it. He was still my little brother. That same week, the texts from Mom started. Mason lost his part-time gig. Can you spot him? $800 till next paycheck. Mason's car got towed, $450 to get it out pretty. Please, Mason's phone bill is overdue. They're shutting it off just this once. Every time I asked why he couldn't cover it himself, the answer was the same bad beats on a couple games. He'd pay me back double when the bets hit. I transferred the money because Mom always ended the messages with, "He's really trying, honey. Don't give up on him." I still believed I owned the apartment, so I told myself I was protecting my own asset by keeping the utilities on and the fridge stocked. I kept sending the money. Then the co-op statement started landing in my old Gmail, the one I'd given the management office years ago. Maintenance fees had jumped from $400 to almost $1,100 a month. Special assessments for a new roof, new elevators, new lobby marble. I forwarded the PDFs to Mom. "Don't worry about those," she wrote back within minutes. "I'll handle it with the board. You're so busy with work." I let it go. Deadlines were crushing me. 3 startups needed full brand packages at once. Easier to let her deal with building drama. Another Saturday, another cleaning trip. The fridge held nothing but energy drinks and half-eaten wings. My coffee maker was gone, replaced by a glowing red betting terminal plugged into the wall outlet screen, frozen on a parlay that apparently hadn't hit. Mason was asleep on the couch phone, still in his hand. DraftKings opened to a minus $12,000 balance. I took photos of the mess for the first time, sent them to Mom. Her reply came fast. "He's going through a rough patch. Delete those." You know how judgmental people can be. I deleted them. Winter rolled in. I wired another $2,000 when Mom said the heat got shut off for non-payment. Spring came another $1,500 because Mason's almost got a system that works. Every transfer hurt a little more, but I still had the deed in my fireproof box back in Brooklyn. Paper doesn't lie. One August morning, the management office called me directly, something they'd never done. They needed signature on a refinancing package or the account would go delinquent. I told them I hadn't applied for any refinance. The woman on the line sounded confused. "But Mr. Brooks submitted everything last month. We just need the co-owner to sign." My mouth went dry. "There is no co-owner. Send me the documents." She promised to email them. Nothing ever arrived. I called Mom instead. She picked up on the first ring, voice too bright. "Oh, sweetie, it's nothing. Mason just needed a little loan against the equity. Your dad co-signed. We'll pay it off in no time." Equity. What equity? The apartment had always been free and clear. I opened my laptop, logged into the city property records for the first time in years, and typed in the address with shaking fingers. Owner of record Mason Edward Brooks. Effective date 14 months earlier. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. My name was gone. And then Grandma walked back into our lives, the very weekend I noticed the maintenance fees being pulled from an account I'd never opened. She showed up at my parents' house in New Jersey on a Friday evening, tanned, silver haircut, short, dragging one battered suitcase, and the same way she had 20 years earlier. She hugged me so hard I smelled salt air and sunscreen on her skin. Dinner was already on the table, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, the usual. We made small talk about Patagonia and Vietnam until the plates were almost clean. That's when she set her fork down and looked straight at me. "Sweetheart, why are you still renting in Brooklyn? What on earth happened to the studio we put in your name, the one with the little balcony facing the park?" Mom laughed too quickly. "Oh, the apartment belongs to Mason now. We transferred everything over so he'd have stability." Dad kept eating, eyes on his food. Mason smirked at his phone. Grandma didn't raise her voice. She just smiled, the calmest, coldest smile I'd ever seen, and said, "Finish your dinner, everyone. Then get your coats. We're taking a drive." No one argued. 45 minutes later, her rental SUV pulled up in front of my building on the Upper West Side. The doorman did a double take when he saw her, then buzzed us straight up. The elevator doors opened on 20. Grandma already had the key in her hand. She must have kept a spare all these years. She turned the lock and pushed the door wide. Mason was sprawled on the couch in basketball shorts. 3 friends around him, beer cans and takeout boxes everywhere. The walls had new scratches and water stains blooming near the ceiling. My string lights were gone. A 60-inch TV hung where my desk used to be. The room smelled like old pizza and weed. He bolted upright. "Grandma, what the hell?" She stepped inside heels, clicking on the hardwood, and dropped a thick folder on the coffee table. Photocopies fanned out like playing cards. The forged deed, the notarized signature that wasn't mine. 2 pages over bank statements showing 2 refinances, and a home equity line totaling $620,000. Every pair of eyes went to the papers, then to Mom and Dad standing frozen in the doorway. Grandma's voice stayed quiet, almost gentle. "Explain." Mom started stammering about helping Mason get on his feet, about interest rates and family support. Dad muttered something about protecting the asset for the next generation. Mason just stared at the floor. Grandma turned to me, eyes sharp. "Did you sign any of this?" I shook my head. My throat wouldn't work. She nodded once, then looked back at my parents. "You had my granddaughter's property put in his name without her consent. You let him mortgage it twice. And you," she pointed at Mason, "turned the home I gave her into a bookmaker's crash pad." Silence. Even Mason's friends stopped breathing. Grandma picked up her folder, tucked it under her arm. "Pack an overnight bag, Valerie," she said to me. "You're staying with me tonight. The rest of you can stay here and think about what happens next." She walked out first. I followed, legs shaking. Behind us, Mom finally found her voice. "Evelyn, you're overreacting." Grandma didn't break stride. "No, Diane, I'm just getting started." The elevator doors closed on their faces. The next morning, Grandma texted me an address for a tiny cafe 2 blocks south of the park. I walked in and spotted her at a corner table with a sharp-eyed woman in a navy blazer. Grandma pulled me into another hug, then gestured to the seat across from them. "Valerie, this is my sister, Aunt Clara. She spent 40 years handling Manhattan real estate law before she retired to Florida. I called her the day I got the first bank letter." Aunt Clara shook my hand firmly, slid a thick accordion folder across the table, and got straight to business. First thing she said, opening to a highlighted page from the New York City ACRIS system. "Here's the deed transfer recorded when Mason turned 21. Your signature is on page 3. Look closely." She laid my old driver's license photo next to the document. The loops on the V were wrong. The tail on the Y was too long. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Forged," Aunt Clara stated. "And the notary who stamped it, Harold Grayson. He and your father golf together every Sunday at Ridgewood Country Club. Conflict of interest the size of Texas." Grandma poured me coffee from the carafe while Clara kept flipping pages. "After the fake deed, your parents co-signed 2 loans against the property. First was a cash-out refinance for $380,000 closed 18 months ago. Second was a home equity line of credit, $240,000 drawn in chunks over the last year. All funds went straight into Mason's brokerage accounts. The bank statements show transfers to FanDuel, DraftKings, and 3 offshore books." She tapped a red-lined notice. Current balance owed $622,411.19. The lender filed a notice of default 61 days ago. Foreclosure auction is scheduled in 59 days unless the full amount is paid. I stared at the numbers until they swam. Grandma reached over and closed the folder. I forwarded everything to Clara the moment that first overdue notice landed at my old mailing address in Queens. I've been on the phone with her almost daily since I landed at JFK. "We're not guessing here, honey. We know exactly what they did." Aunt Clara leaned in, voice low but steady. "The good news, forged deeds are void from the moment they're recorded. New York law is crystal clear on that. We file a quiet title action to cancel the fraudulent transfer, then a separate fraud claim against the notary and anyone who knowingly participated. The bank's liens attach to Mason's name, not yours, once the deed is voided. Your parents are personally liable because they signed as guarantors. She pulled out a legal pad already covered in neat handwriting. I've drafted the complaints. We can file electronically Monday morning. Discovery will force them to turn over every bank record, every text message, every Venmo. They'll drown in paper before they ever see a courtroom. Grandma squeezed my hand. I kept every original document in a safe deposit box in Zurich. The 2005 deed with only your name, the gift letter, the closing statement showing cash purchase. Nothing they filed can stand against that. I finally found my voice. How much will all this cost? Clara waved it off. Pro bono for family. I never liked Diane's enabling anyway. Consider it my welcome home gift to my favorite niece. Grandma smiled for the first time since the night before. We're taking your home back, Valerie, and we're doing it the right way through the courts, so no one can ever touch it again. I looked out the cafe window at joggers circling the reservoir, steam rising from my untouched coffee. For the first time in years, the knot in my chest started to loosen. I hired my own litigation attorney that same week, a shark named Lauren Park, who specialized in real estate fraud. We filed 2 complaints the following Monday in New York County Supreme Court, a quiet title action to void the fraudulent deed, and a separate fraud on deed lawsuit naming Mason, both parents, and the crooked notary as defendants. Aunt Clara stayed on as consulting counsel. Lauren handled the courtroom. The harassment started immediately. Mom left 16 voicemails the first day, voice cracking between tears and rage. You're destroying your brother's future. If you go through with this, we'll lose the house in New Jersey. How can you do this to your own family? Dad sent long texts about blood being thicker than property lines. Mason alternated between begging and threats. I'll pay you back everything once my system hits, I swear. Drop the suit, or you'll never see any of us again. I stopped answering and blocked their numbers one by one. Grandma changed her phone too, just in case. Discovery dragged 11 brutal months. Lauren subpoenaed every bank record, every sports betting statement, every text thread. The paper trail was devastating: screenshots of Mom wiring Mason 30 grand the day after a refinance closed, Dad emailing the notary a scanned copy of my old signature for reference, Mason bragging in group chats about free money from Big Sis's condo. The handwriting expert we hired took the stand for 3 days. Under cross-examination, he demonstrated 27 distinct differences between my real signature and the forgery. The judge literally shook her head at the defense table. Harold Grayson, the golf buddy notary, took a plea to avoid jail and surrendered his commission permanently. Mom cried on the courthouse steps when the news cameras caught it. Mason refused to settle. He showed up to every hearing in the same wrinkled hoodie, convinced until the last minute that family loyalty would save him. It didn't. On a rainy Thursday morning, the judge banged the gavel and read the ruling from the bench. Plaintiff Valerie Brooks is hereby declared the sole and rightful owner of the premises. The 2019 deed purporting to transfer title to defendant Mason Brooks is declared void ab initio due to forgery. All mortgages, liens, and encumbrances recorded against the fraudulent deed are extinguished, as against plaintiff's title. Defendants Diane and Richard Brooks remain personally liable to the lender under their guarantees. Defendant Mason Brooks is ordered to vacate the premises within 30 calendar days or face forcible removal by the city marshal. The courtroom was silent except for Mom's muffled sobbing. Lauren turned to me with the smallest professional smile. Congratulations, you just won your home back? Grandma squeezed my shoulder so hard I felt her rings dig in. Aunt Clara gave a single satisfied nod. Mason stormed out without looking at anyone. Mom tried to follow me into the hallway, arms reaching, mascara streaking. Valerie, please, security escorted her out. That night I sat alone in my Brooklyn rental deed in my lap, The real one, the one Grandma had protected across 3 continents, and let myself cry for the first time since the whole nightmare began. I stepped back into the apartment holding the key the city marshal had just handed me. Mason had vanished sometime before dawn on day 29, taking only a duffel and his gaming monitors. The place looked like a tornado had hit a sports bar. Empty bottles, cigarette burns in the hardwood, a cracked flat screen still bolted crookedly to my brick wall. I opened every window, let the October air sweep through, and started throwing black trash bags down the chute. Contractors came the following week. New floors, fresh paint, the exact soft gray I'd always wanted, a rebuilt kitchen with quartz counters and the 2-burner stove I actually used. I hung new string lights, brighter ones, and bought 2 simple teak chairs for the balcony. The deed went into a new fireproof safe bolted inside the closet this time. 3 weeks after the eviction, the bank foreclosed on my parents' house in New Jersey. They had ignored every demand letter, refused to refinance, and watched the auction happen from the sidewalk. Mom sent one last email from a Gmail address I didn't recognize. "We have nowhere to go." I left it on red and blocked that too. Mason couch surfed for months, then moved into a windowless basement in Queens with 3 other guys who spent their nights on the same betting apps. I know because a mutual friend mentioned it once. I changed the subject. I changed everything else too. New phone number, new locks with codes. Only Grandma and Aunt Clara have new mail forwarding service, so nothing ever goes to the old family address again. I kept designing, took on bigger clients, finally raised my rates without apology. The studio became the quiet, bright space I had dreamed of at 18. One clear November evening, I carried a glass of wine out to the balcony, sat in one of the teak chairs, and looked across the park as the skyline turned gold. The trees were bare, the reservoir mirrored the last light, and for the first time in almost 20 years, the apartment felt completely, undeniably mine. I thought about every dollar I had sent, every excuse I had swallowed, every boundary I had refused to draw. I thought about the little girl who once promised to take care of her brother forever, and the woman who finally understood that love without limits is just another word for enabling. Unlimited kindness doesn't save anyone. It only teaches them how much they can take. That's the real gift Grandma gave me, not the studio itself, but the lesson that came wrapped in betrayal and paid for in court fees. Your peace is not negotiable. Your property is not communal. And family who treat you like an ATM when times are good will treat you like an enemy the moment you close the vault. I still get postcards from Grandma, new ones now, from places she's revisiting with Aunt Clara. They always end the same way: love you bigger than the sky. Keep the balcony light on. I do. Only now it shines for me.